Hello everyone, welcome back to another portal mapping and modding tutorial, and I am your host for today, Connie. I'll be going over some of the basics of using paint entities in Portal 2. The first step to making a hammer map that uses paint is to go to the top bar under Map, Map Properties, and make sure the key value Paint in Map is set to Yes. If it's set to No, paint won't work. And it's set to no by default, so just make sure that this is selected. If you open map properties, it'll select your whole map, but you can deselect the map by pressing Shift Q. Step 2 of getting paint to work in your map is to make sure that there is light. Even if you have paint enabled, the paint will work, but you won't be able to see it if there's no light, and I'll explain why later. But for now, I've just set up this light, the very high constant, that just shines across the whole room so that we can at least see what's happening and be able to see the gel. The first entity I want to go over is Info Paint Sprayer. It's a pretty basic entity, and this is probably what most of the gel sprayers you're going to find, or gel spawners in this game, are going to be this entity. It's responsible for the streams of gel that you see in the game and in community maps. So I'm just going to give this a simple name. Call it Paint Sprayer. And I'm going to set Start Active to Yes, because I want this to be on by default. Obviously, if you want it to be activated by a button or something, you always have this set to no and instead turn it on and off through inputs and outputs. As for paint type, I want this to be speed gel. Blobs per second. In most cases, you very likely don't want only one gel blob per second. So I'm going to set it to, let's say, 20. And I'm going to set the ambient sound to medium flow. Ambient sound just, controls the sound that it makes. Your choices are drip, medium flow, and heavy flow. Now, the rest of these key values are just ways to better control the spawning of the gel and how the gel behaves. Minimum blob speed and maximum blob speed determine how fast the gel is moving when it spawns. It'll choose a random value between these two. Spread radius determines the radius in which the gel can spawn randomly, and the angle determines what angle or direction the gel will be going when it is spawned. As for all of these streak key values, streaking in this sense refers to the same thing as in the puzzle maker, where streaking is just when gel spreads across a surface that it is oblique to. So, like gel spreading across the floor onto a ramp kind of thing. I'm just going to set that to 60 because this is speed gel. We're assuming that we want it to spread. Now, we just have some basic settings set up. I'm going to move it up into our dropper model, and we're going to compile and see what it looks like. So here, we can see our gel flow. It's very blobby, but it's also very uniform. It's all only falling down in one location. There's no randomness or variety to it, because I didn't touch any of the random values. But now that I've got it working, we can look back at these values and modify them all. Say I want the minimum speed to be 80, and I want the spread radius to be 32, and the angle to be, let's just say, 5. Just something nice and simple. Now we can compile again and see how that looks. So there we go. It's a bit spread out because of the radius, but otherwise it's more random and looks a bit more natural. Ultimately, paint sprayers take a lot of trial and error to get right. If in doubt, open up a Valve map and see what settings they use. For example, I probably wouldn't actually use a radius this high because you can see of how much space there is between each spawning blob. But it just adds a bit of variety to the flow. The next entity I want to go over is Prop Paint Bomb. Now, you're going to need a few entities to make this work. So I have here a prop paint bomb, a point template, and an env entity maker. Let's start with the paint bomb. I'm going to name it something simple. Paint bomb. Easy. The type of paint I want it to be, I'm going to set it to bounce because I want bouncy gel. As for bomb type, literally I have no clue. I've scoured the world. Nobody knows what this does, so don't worry about it. As for the allow silent dissolve key value, silent dissolve is usually the input that you will use in goo pits to dispose of cubes or turrets or things that fall into the goo. It'll essentially fizzle them, but without making any of the sounds. So this just allows that to also happen to bombs. If this is set to no, then that just means the bomb will explode as normal. Now, there's not much we have to do with this entity, but in the point template, which I will name paint bomb template, we have to select the paint bomb. So select the paint bomb as your template 1, and then go on to your end entity maker, which I will name paint bomb maker. Then you must select the point template that you want to spawn. And there are some settings here for randomness. I don't find these as useful for paint bombs because you want paint bombs to be a bit more consistent, since you only have one of them at a time, as opposed to the gel streams, which are always. But regardless. So this is all set up. And something I want to do is I want to take the paint bomb, the prop paint bomb, and overlap it with the point template. And the reason why is because if they're offset from each other, then your paint bomb will spawn in the wrong place. So I have them on top of each other so that they spawn correctly. Now I'm going to move over here, move these over here. Now because of the point template, as long as you have don't remove template entities unchecked, this paint bomb will not spawn in-game. It will only be used as a template. So you don't have to worry about where you put this. I'm just going to put it over here because it's out of the way. Now, I of course want my paint bomb maker to be inside the dropper, so I'm just going to put it up there. And I also want a way to spawn the paint bomb. So I have a button here, and I'm just going to on-pressed paint bomb maker for spawn. So now I'm going to run the game and we'll see how that is. So here, I press this button, it spawns a paint bomb. A blue one to be exact, because that's what we set it to. You know, just nice and simple, as intended. The last entity I want to introduce in this tutorial is Paint Sphere. So this is a very simple entity that will paint anything within its radius. It's often used for pre-placed gel in maps, and sometimes it's also used if you want to script gel placement and not rely on the physics of gel. So I'm just going to call this Paint Sphere. And let's say I want it to be portal gel. The radius refers to the radius in which gel is spawned or applied to surfaces. I'm just going to leave it at the default because for demonstration purposes. Alpha % is how dense the gel will be. So if I set it to 1, it will try to fully paint everything in that area. But if I set it to 0.7, it'll only paint it 70%, quotation marks. But I'm going to hook up this button to this paint sphere, and we'll see how it works in game. Here we have our button, and pressing the button paints the ground in the radius that we set, and it doesn't paint it fully because we set it to 0.7%. You can see, because there's still space, if I press it again, it paints it more. Now, in most cases, you're probably not going to have a button that magically places gel on the ground. This is just for demonstration purposes, but say if you wanted a pre-placed gel splat like this, you would use a paint sphere and hook it up to a trigger where the player can't see it, or to a logic auto. And the logic auto is this funny little entity here. And what you could do is you could just add on map spawn, paint sphere, paint. And then that will make it so that the paint is pre-placed when you load in without having to trigger it otherwise. Look, it's already there. The last thing I want to talk about is just going a little bit more into depth about why we need lighting for paint to work. And that's because the way that paint is shown in-game is reliant on your light resolution. So I take my portal gun, and I start spreading some gel. You can see here, on this surface, the gel looks fine. I mean, this is just normal. This is the default light map resolution that Hammer has, so it looks fine here. Over here, I have this area set to a light map resolution of 2, and now that means that the gel is a lot higher resolution, as opposed to the gel on the other surface. You can see that it's a lot denser. Now if I go to this surface, which has a light map density of 64, the gel is a lot larger and lower resolution. So what the game does is, we can see here these are the light maps that we can edit in the texture application tool. The game reuses these light maps for what are called Paintmaps. So that's why the resolution of your lighting also affects the resolution of your gel. We can see that with the gel on these different surfaces that have different resolutions of lighting. So that's also why you need lighting in your map for gel to be visible. So yeah, those are just the basics for getting gel up and running in a Hammer map, and understanding at a basic level how and why the paint works the way it does. And hopefully it will save you many headaches from trying to test a map that doesn't have paint enabled, or trying to test a map that you haven't added lighting to yet, because you need both of those things. You need paint enabled and you need lighting. And yeah, hopefully that has been helpful. Thank you for watching, and make sure to tune in to Portal Mapping and Modding for more tutorials on Fridays. Yeah, goodbye!